So today I'm going to be talking about comping rhythms. And I know this is a discussion that we've had before. Actually made another video where I talked about it. But the purpose of this video today is specific rhythms that you can use when you are comping. And if you've taken jazz improvisation from me, you've probably seen this same handout before, because I teach these same rhythms for improvisers who are either beginner improvisers or really any level of improviser in terms of just trying to kind of clarify the rhythms that you're using. So just really quickly, the rhythmic choices we make and the way we play those rhythms, that is very much more important oftentimes than our note choices. I know that's a big statement to make. And yes, of course, like the note choices matter. If you're playing a voicing on a G7 chord, yeah, you need to be playing an F natural and a B natural, the third and the seventh in your voicing, not a B flat, right? That would make the chord G minor. So the note choices, of course, matter, but it doesn't matter to me how great your voicings are if the rhythms that you're playing are unclear. And what happens a lot of the time for especially people who are just learning how to comp is that they tend towards one thing or the other. They tend towards playing oversimplified rhythms, so lots of whole notes that are held out forever long, or they tend towards playing super busy rhythms and really dense rhythmic figures. And oftentimes, in either of those examples, they are not clear. That person is not clear about where they're placing the rhythm. So even if they're playing long pads or held out notes, it's still kind of unclear if they started that note on the and a 4 or on beat 1. It's not clear. And then especially when someone tries to play more complex or dense rhythmic figures when they are comping, usually it's very unclear where they intend those rhythmic figures to be happening in the measure. So I've found in my experience that having a few simple and clear rhythmic ideas in your back pocket can really help to clarify your comping voice and really help you feel comfortable and help the rest of the band feel comfortable. So this is why I have this sheet. It just gives you a few starting point rhythms to use. And we're going to talk mostly about this first one, number 1, which is the rhythm that we call the Charleston. Okay. The Charleston rhythm, if you are familiar with that, comes from that song. One of the places you may have heard it is that, Charleston, da da, do da do ba do da do, right? And it's a type of dance. The Charleston is a type of dance. So, but the kind of pared down, simplified rhythm of it is what's notated here in number 1, example number 1. A dotted quarter note with an eighth note. And the eighth note traditionally is short, but it doesn't have to be. You will, as you look down this handout, notice that basically all of these rhythms are derived from the Charleston. Okay, they're all just kind of variations of that, which goes to show how much or how far one simple rhythmic concept can take you. And yeah, so I'm going to demonstrate a few of these and talk about them, but one thing that is just, I guess I want to reiterate that's so important and mention is that it's okay and encouraged and smart to play simple rhythmic ideas when you're comping. Complex rhythmic ideas as a comping musician, in my opinion, when they are used sparsely and carefully and maturely, they can add so much to the music. But if that's all you're doing, it just becomes noise. It's just chatter. And it leads me to ask the question I'm always asking, is what I'm doing making the music better or is it taking away from the music? And oftentimes, if I'm playing more dense rhythmic ideas in my comping, it is not adding to the music. It is taking away from the music, in my opinion. So that's always a good like check for myself, a self-check. It just, am I adding to the music or am I taking away? And if I decide that I'm not adding anything of value to the music in that moment, then I will either stop playing and leave a few bars of rest, or I will simplify the rhythms that I'm playing. Another thing I want to add is that it is okay as a comping musician to use repetition in your comping rhythms. It's okay to repeat rhythms. In fact, it's sometimes really good to repeat rhythms. It adds tension. It can add tension depending on what the rhythm is. It adds familiarity, comfort. It can add a lot of different things, but it is absolutely okay. And, the reality of all of this is that nobody is inventing new rhythms to comp, right? Like, most of the time, especially for you all, you're going to be playing songs in 4/4 or maybe 3/4. And so you play enough songs. Let's say you play 30 songs in 4/4. How many types of rhythms can you play? You're not going to be inventing new rhythms. So it's okay and good to use rhythms that are familiar. Another reason it's good to use rhythms that are familiar is that the rest of the band hopefully has heard those rhythms before and can choose to play them with you, can choose to play something that will complement those rhythms or something that will contrast with those rhythms. Or even if they just keep doing what they're doing, they still are able to recognize what you are doing and how that's adding to the music. So I'm going to demonstrate a little bit here. Just over like a 2-5-1, I'm going to use a blues since that's what we're going to be working on in class. So I'm going to play a blues, and I'm going to demonstrate I'm going to walk a bass line in my left hand and demonstrate kind of what it sounds and feels like when somebody uses a lot of complex, dense rhythmic figures in their comping, okay? And I'm coming at this from the standpoint of maybe someone who is more of a beginner, so they don't have as many voicings to choose from. They might only know a couple of voicings, but they want to play some more dense rhythmic figures. So that would sometimes sound something like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, even most of what I did was like in the subdivision. There were a few moments that weren't. But even when it's all falling in the subdivision, and sure, we could record that and transcribe it and write it out. Imagine yourself as an improviser trying to solo when that's what's happening in the piano or guitar. When the comping musician is playing a lot of kind of busy, unclear rhythmic ideas. It takes a lot of things away from you as an improviser. So now I'm just going to play that Charleston rhythm through an entire chorus, just repeating it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Left a measure of rest, hey. Pause on that. My little buddy needs to take a break, and I'll pick it up in just a second. Quick break. So hopefully that helps you to hear just like a really simple example of how much more clear it is, and how much more what an environment of stability is provided when you play a simple, clear rhythm, even if you're repeating the same thing over and over again. So I'm going to demonstrate that again, and I'm going to use one of the other ones. Let's see. I'm going to pick number 7. Okay. So notice here, the figure goes over across 2 bars. So if let's say you have a chord for this measure and a chord for this measure, you would obviously change your voicing in the middle of this rhythmic figure. Okay, and you'll hear that on this time around. So same thing, blues, just a 12-bar blues, and I'm gonna play that figure. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's a little bit different figure just because of where it falls in the measure. But using that and kind of mixing and matching it with some of these other ones would give you some ammo, you know? So I'm going to play a chorus and use a mixture of different different rhythms from this handout. I'm going to mostly use that number 1. That'll be kind of my base, my starting point. And we'll just go from there. I may play 2 choruses. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, you know, it's in reality, in the reality of playing, in the moment of performing or rehearsing, you probably typically won't be thinking, I'm going to play number 5. Now I'm going to play number 2. Now I'm going to play number 8. Now I'm going to repeat number 7 for a few, you know, you're not going to be thinking that way. It's not like that. We aren't computers and it's not a plug and play situation. But practicing these rhythms gives you somewhere to start. And when in doubt, default to one of these rhythms. In fact, I would say when in doubt, default to number 1, number 3, or number 5, right? Those are all kind of the most basic interpretations of the Charleston. So one last thing I'd like to say is that if you're wanting to learn the rhythmic language of jazz, which all of these examples here are derived from the Charleston, yes, which is derived from the rhythmic language of jazz. The Charleston is like kind of one of the most important, or I guess most prevalent, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, prevalent kind of seed figures, rhythmic figures that we use. But if you're wanting to learn more of that rhythmic language, I highly recommend, cannot recommend enough, listening to big band recordings. Okay, especially if you listen to like Count Basie and Basie's band, Ellington as well. And of course, there are some more contemporary modern bands that you can listen to and learn this stuff from too. And so it's certainly not just Basie and Ellington, but those are really good places to go. And if you're looking for somewhere to start, I would say start with Count Basie. If you listen to any big band shout chorus, the rhythms are usually fairly simple and straightforward because it's usually all of the horns playing tutti, right? Rhythmically, they're playing together. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. So those rhythms are usually more simple and really indicative of the rhythmic language of jazz. So that is a good place to go if you're wanting to get some ideas. But ultimately, start with these ones that I've got notated here. For us in this class, for the remainder of this semester, we will be using the Charleston. Big shock there, right? I bet you had no idea that was coming. So if you are wanting to start incorporating these rhythms in, start with that one. Start with number 1 or number 5. which are essentially the same thing. It's just that number 1, the 2 notes are connected, and number 5, they are not connected. So that's a great place to start as you're working on your voicings. I think that's about it for that. So we will discuss this more in class. But this gives you kind of an introductory thing to think about. So there you go, comping.